fiction, science fiction, horror, fantasy, crime, LGBT, thriller.
You have now entered the House of Mystery.
You are back in the House of Mystery, and joining us, an author that's part of the Larceny Last Chances series. It's 22 stories of mystery and suspense. Superior Shores anthology book, and it's number 4. Welcome, John Bukowski. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you, Alan. Thanks for having me on.
John, so how'd you get involved in this project?
Well, I'm very pleased to be involved with such a august company. I submitted my story, which was called Wheel of Fortune. I'm always on the lookout for anthologies and magazines to publish my short fiction. I submitted, and it was a good match. And Judy Penz Sheluk, who is the editor, liked it, and so I'm in it.
There you go. Well, you say you're always looking for anthologies. Why is that? Like, what is it about anthologies that you like?
First of all, I like short fiction. I used to read anthologies back in the day, when they were more popular. But I write short fiction. And the two main places to get short fiction published are magazines and anthologies. So I'm always on the lookout for possible opportunities. There's not as many as there used to be in the past, but they're still out there.
Yeah, they're still out there. Is it still is there a business for it still, like with the internet and everything, the way it's going now to do these like magazines and stuff like that, or are they sort of disappearing?
No, they're still there. Most of them are electronic. Not so much in print anymore. There are some print still, but most of the online, they're mostly online magazines.
Well, I also think that anthologies, they tend to, a magazine tends to have kind of a house style that you have to, kind of mimic or connect to or what have you. But with an anthology, it seems that they allow so many different types and styles to have, just a whole bunch of different works. Do you find that? Do you find that it's more, I hate to say easier to get a story, especially a story maybe you've already written, into an anthology, but it seems to me maybe a little bit more efficient?
Well, it all depends. I've found that I've been writing short fiction for about 10 years and 8 years, something like that. And I found that a lot of it depends on matching the theme. You're right that with, if you write, I tend to write my short stories first on ideas that interest me, and then I look for a theme. This particular one was a very good match because mine is a story about a career criminal who's given a last chance or a last opportunity. And this is Larceny and Last Chances. So it was a very good fit in that respect. But a lot of good stories don't get published, not because they're not good, but because they didn't match the theme of the magazine, the genre that they're looking for, whatever, or subgenre, or they didn't match the anthology thing.
So now your story, it's called Wheel of Fortune. So let's talk about that. So tell us the premise of the story.
Well, the premise of the story is there's I don't want to give too much away, but there is a criminal getting ready to do a robbery at a casino. He's given a last chance to turn his life around. And, the whole idea is, does he take it and go against his partners in crime? Does he keep going down the path? It's that's the beauty of the story, I think.
Well, you got to give us the answer here. No, I just. So you find when you write a character like that, where does that character come from?
All my characters, I think every fiction writer's characters come through themselves, if not from themselves. So there's some aspects of the writer in every character. There's aspects of people they have known. I did some community theater acting years ago. Writing is a lot like developing a character for the stage, in that you use your life experience, all the people you've known, you've watched, you've spoken to, family members, friends, and you bring them through yourself to take on a new voice that's part you and part them.
That's interesting. How do you experience your characters when you write them like this? Do you see them, feel them, hear them? Like what's your experience?
Yeah, I especially like writing dialogue. When I'm really in the groove writing dialogue, I'm not making it up. I'm taking dictation. I'm hearing the two people talking back and forth in my head, and I'm writing it down. a similar kind of thing with internal dialogue, people's thought processes and stuff. I can almost hear the thoughts in my head. Now, I don't know if that makes me nuts, but it seems to be pretty liberating.
Yeah, I was going to say, how do you tell which ones are the real voices?
Yeah, it's hard to filter them out.
Well, mentioning, talking about acting, do you act out your scenes when you're talking to your characters? I do that sometimes. So yeah, but I'm a little crazy.
Yeah, to a certain extent. A lot of times, especially if I'm revising something or having trouble with something, I'll read it aloud. Read it as the characters would read it if it's dialogue. That helps not only solidify it in my head, but it also, you can kind of pick up, whoa, that may look okay on the page, but it's hard to say. And if something's hard to say, it's hard for someone else to read. So might make some changes based on that.
And meanings. Do you have any subtext? I always find that, short stories always remind me of like a Twilight Zone sort of, Alfred Hitchcock presents sort of idea. And they always had a meaning. I was a kid and I'd watch those and there was some sort of lesson they were trying to teach me, Do you do that with your short stories?
Number one for me is to entertain. They oftentimes have a twist ending like the Twilight Zone. I'm a child of the Twilight Zone from the 60s. Sometimes they have a subtext. Sometimes there is, certainly there's a character arc. How the character changes from the beginning to the end of the story. It's not the same as like a character arc in a novel, which is much broader and takes much more gradual. But yeah, there'll be the character arc, and sometimes there's a subtext, but mostly it's to entertain.
And short stories, I always find that short story writers, because I'm not that, I haven't even tried it, but short story writers, you have to get the reader to understand the character and the situation really quickly, not like in a full novel, full book.
Right.
So if you have a method of what you use in your, I don't know, just in the way you describe things or the way you talk about things when you write, is there some sort of method that I can steal so I can try writing short stories?
As you say, it has to be much more condensed than a novel, and you have to think of that first off. When I was in industry, I worked in industry for a while, and people would always approach projects. They would want to talk and talk and talk about the beginning. And I would say, remember, especially if I was running the project, we have to have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and we only have so much budget. So we can't spend all our time in the beginning or all the time in the middle. And you have to think of that with a short story. You can't let yourself fall into novel mode, or else you end up with a novella. Something over 10, 12,000 words, which is much harder to sell and get published.
So what do you get out of this? What does it do for you when every time you do a short story and you get it published?
Well, it's a great feeling of accomplishment. I love writing. All writers like to know that people are reading what they're writing. It's kind of a hollow pursuit without that. And so when you get a short story, or when I got my 2 novels published, it's a real feeling of accomplishment. The story you thought good enough to come up with, someone else likes it enough to publish it, and hopefully readers like it.
Do you have a preference? Do you prefer novels, short stories? Do you find that you're more of a natural short story writer or more of a natural novelist?
I don't know if I'm natural one way or the other. I can do both, and not everybody can do that. I enjoy novels, but novels are much more like, I always liken it to, I have a PhD in epidemiology, and I liken it to pursuing my PhD research. You do a little bit every day for a long period of time. Whereas with a short story, oftentimes if I got an idea, I can knock off a first draft in 1 to 3 days. Whereas with a novel, you're working on 500 to 1,000 words a day for, 90 days, 180 days, something like that. So you have to change gears kind of in your thinking. But I enjoy both.
So when you're writing this, it seems like do you like writing darker material, mystery, suspense, and all this more than any other genre?
I would probably say I write thrillers, and my first thriller, Project Suicide, was a very dark, or a relatively dark thriller. It's about a cure for Alzheimer's that's perverted into an assassination drug. So you can imagine that that's kind of dark. And my second book is about a bomber extorting money from hotels, checkout time. So that has its dark moments. But yeah, I enjoy getting there. It's funny, in my acting career, I played Jonathan in Arsenic and Old Lace twice, and Jonathan's the psychopath. And so my wife always kind of cringes about that.
Came natural, didn't it?
It came naturally to me anyway.
Yeah, it was easy,
When you think about it, though, it's like Stephen King writes some pretty bizarre characters, and he's not that bizarre a person. So we all have it in there. It's just whether you want to let it out.
Do you do things differently now that there's a lot more sensitivity readers and writers and stuff like that? Like there's publishers are more on it, they're more cautious, and you'll get this,
right.
You know what I mean? And it's not, but do you alter anything, or do you just kind of go with it?
I try not to censor myself too much. I think that's a death knell for an author. If you think about constantly censoring yourself, at least in the initial drafts, you're going to hurt the impact of the work. You're going to hurt the creativity coming out of you. That's got to be kind of a free flow of ideas. Later, in a later draft, you might lighten up a scene, make a love scene less explicit, or make a crime or a murder less explicit a little bit. And certainly, if editor comes back to you or publisher and says, we like this, but we'd like it a little, I'm more than happy to work with that. But at least in the initial drafting, I try to just let it flow.
Do you like writing the evil character, or the one that causes the pain, so to speak, in the story?
Yeah, well, a lot of actors will tell you that they like playing villains the most. I think there's a certain truth to that. I mean, I think the key to a villain is it should be interesting. I think of things like Hannibal Lecter. There's a man who certainly is as villainous as they come, but he's interesting. He almost compels you to watch, and he's got a sense of humor. Senator loved the suit. So I think the character should be interesting, have a personality, and you have to remember that the villain doesn't think he's villainous. He's doing what he thinks he needs to do or she needs to do to get whatever objective they're trying to reach. And
you kind of got to show that, right? You got to have the reader understand that. That's why I always think it's so amazing in a short story that you can get all of that in there. So who have you killed off in your real life in your stories?
Oh, if I told you that, I'd have to kill you.
Yes. Oh, come on. We won't tell anyone, really.
Well, that's like I said, like Stephen King, he killed off 1,000 people. And I don't think he's ever actually killed anyone. And it's the same with character acting when you're doing theater or whatever. The people misunderstand what method acting is. You don't actually have to go out to kill somebody to be a killer. You have to start to think a little bit like a killer.
Well, listen, let's talk about how people contact you. Do you do a social media a lot? Do you have a website? Where would readers find you?
I do have a website. It's thrillerjohnb.net. I mostly write thrillers. You can also find me on Facebook and, to a certain extent, Twitter. My two novels, Checkout Time and Project Suicide, the easiest way to get to those is projectsuicidenovel.com, all one word, or checkouttimenovel.com, all one word. Google those. It'll take you right to Amazon. Well, perfect. No, we're going to have that up on the website, and great. It's been great having you here. And I guess the anthology, all that's out right now. Yeah, it's out right now. You can purchase it on Amazon or Barnes & Noble or any place like that. It's 22 really good short stories. I've only read a couple of them, but I've really enjoyed them. So check it out. Well, fantastic. Well, John Bukowski, thank you for being here. Thank you, Alan. Thanks, John.
This has been a production of the House of Mystery Radio Show. To find out more about our show, guests, or hosts, go to our website at houseofmysteryradio.com.